Okay, so like definitely inspiration right now is definitely for like the most worship party like and then to like definitely to straight away capture like anyone who like refuses to that agree and join like the most of worship party and it's like goals and like it's believed by like totally dealing with them by like just straight away capturing them and putting them into like a kind of like a side of situation to eventually have them be turned into that sacrifice for like the most of it. Is like very good scenario time. So that actually an incident right now is definitely for like Garo definitely talking to greatly as well like Garo like to be come down to like completing that like basically to bring down like the monster of rotation so that like just being like the only way for like bring down like the entirety of the monster of rotation and all the monsters in like the mental of rotation including that monster thing about being that only way for like to be able to make this like impact as like the most single strong powerful monster in front of like the adaptive technology would be along the lines of different like a conclusion that like Garo being come down to especially get like something like Garo being like situated in a more realistic manner as well. Luckily with like Garo just now having like 3% at like the mock Garo in base and having witnessed like even just by the mere presence itself of like one thing or I think like Garo might have been like sense that experience to be the point of like one thing or thing. And like the Garo having seen the field it's quite what like creative motor and like even like anything going deep by so definitely Garo will be competing in a more realistic manner that basically definitely when Garo will be setting up his sport to definitely to definitely for example like the most of the using like Garo deciding to like decided that like currently he's like really not so strong to be able to like do that so Garo instead deciding to like to level up and to like increase it, like spend to like have a step as soon as quickly and basically challenge even like extremely tough of like heroes than rank heroes than like the rank heroes like than the heroes like she has like challenge and fought up against like make it up for like Garou to like have more extremely even more tough up and challenging fight and to that way to like between both like extremely challenging fights and that way for like Garou to open himself and that way to have that sort of into like fun. Like we have to do like with activity that is like everything free of like that after like with the challenging battle of like like I'm putting like like power level might be such that like it will be most likely having a good sharp fight with like every challenging battle like should be winning might be like that communication should be like and then about which like might be okay Garo of course like about the like so at least Garo is what are the different Garo who knows that is that he can have this like next goal to to like quickly as soon as possible like increase his like strength before like in that particular monster open should you be finally making that mate and allowing that collective ultimate attack on like the human for that basically before like that happened for like the to actually to that strengthen up by taking up by fighting off against like way more like higher rank uh, heroes and fight challenging fights and defeat them and basically tougher like way tougher like a point heroes and basically definitely for like our competing of like the Silbury to listen I think like Silver Fang like our streets are like Silver Fang I think it's like rank three that's a rank three hero like I'm focusing Garo yeah that continue of definitely challenging and defeating like Silver Fang uh definitely would be a necessary condition for like to definitely rise up to that level of strength to just like will be able to like have the confidence to that will be at that point with that achieve that by achieving that level of strength like from Dara to like return back to like the motivation and challenge like the motivation and thinking I'm ready like complex motivation get organized like Garo focus back into like create or planning mind when I'm the chicken that Garo will be totally by sheer point will be running into most likely not just silver bank but also uh, uh, running into his like rubber as well like a different like the silver bank and like rubber will be like rushing out of like the home of like data due to that like serious guy who's like stopping like Saitama like home with the whole uploading thing will be that sometimes like maybe not being loved but like for example but like still and like him only being an instrument hero who might be still be and I feel like stepping into like things right now I'm totally going according to like like stealthy fans like uh, look like all these like hero like the top heroes in like the hero position like really getting off to like the monster of the weekend base as well as like this like transmit of like specifically king as well as like gene of like okay getting damage simultaneously around at the same time like definitely that as well might have definitely should still be what of like most likely setting it the robot setting it so as well might be still be like and making all of one community like the terminal things and like definitely king as well as gene of like function like getting damage and can connect them okay being unaware of the next of the latest mode of like the routers and that way like them without realizing that at present being in like the situation of then females of as well as like seeing at present being present at like right some of them might have been that necessary condition that like will be coming up might have wanted while sending might have been a master might have sent to that right here or toward Saitama so and the later the permission sitting the permission that like Amemas might have been the leader of like the gang who had basically like the long distance bus like in Garou's like backstory had basically always forced Garou to play like the role of like the monster and like the leader of the gang who always played like the role of like, hero might have been definitely Amemas backstory. But definitely like that might have been Amemas and might have been like Amemas and all this like one that might have been is like attacking and forcing Garou to play the role of that monster might have been like his level of conditioning, like exactly like how Garou never figured out of like that whole uh like parents of from like things about and that way like that shaping up uh the first Garou even to like the person and like Garou and having that ultimate goal to be like the not from like I'm like in a similar yeah like the kind of way like and I mean not just like not grown out of lack of like extreme obsession towards that wanted to be like ultimate just for example okay but like in the case of one of that it is like I mean not made a proof like it the obsession might have turned into such a way that we might have wanted to be like the one and only hero and like the one and only celebrity and like the one and only popular individual in like the uh, individual and that no one has to be more like the one and only savior of that of humanity. Uh, basically, in like the world might be around the lines of that with extreme obsession that I mean, usually might have done as like I mean, like the elements and so definitely behind all this creation of like some of the opposition as well as in like the past like we just huge million amount of people like basically showing up to the human world and basically Saitama even having like that ultimate battle against like that for alien like monster and everything like basically even like that force that mother figure along like that both alien monster like showing up to like the human world and fighting off against like Saitama that's even that as well. Even from way back then, like Among Us might have been targeting Saitama because like most likely even before like Saitama even joining, like the game also using that Among Us might have knew about like Saitama being like the strong hero might be like that which is like the mentioned because and major is only in like this extreme obsession of like Among Us, which might have um uh the importance in like way back in like which might have resulted in like Among Us like carefully and like showing each and every single hero in like hero situation and like their battle uh their powers and everything and like along the way, like at some point, like I'm not like ended up in like also and like this his role and this and like all that like twenty telling like the fight from all the front heroes and like the heroes so from the front heroes and like the heroes like might get one point like I'm in one of like the fights of like this like hero like the past against like not powerful monster like in such a like might have been the scenario of like that Frank Hero might have lost to that part of Frank Hero might have lost to that monster and at that point like it might have been when like Saitama made have totally sold up and basically that might have taken off like that monster and saved that Frank Hero and like even though like the public didn't find out about like Saitama like being like the savior and like even though the public might have totally might have totally missed that and might have thought that like even though the Frank Hero might have imagined so badly injured that and defeated like might have things that might have taken off managed to like still taken off that off the water like and you can still Amema might have been observing how to send might have even from way back then like might have suddenly found out that like Saitama is like strong hero definitely my friend because that is something like observation of like all the players like that are rock heroes and all the cancer was like and that even complex like an analysis of like of this observation of all the heroes and comparing that with like the like like the power of like Saitama and like which like Saitama based on like this is like another like since the like like Neymar Saitama is currently spying on and Saitama and my doubt with us like certainly because like different multiple bats like by then like multiple certainly not different by then like Amima made a here for Amima like second like from the and Amima made a win faster than for like Amima that like Amima certainly won't be like able to definitely regardless of how much like Amima trains like won't be able to like fight and also get on the lines like Amima made a thing down to the certainly not and until that point, like the only hero that like Amema might have been confirmed about and might have been seen as like the schedule to like long might have been just like the hero trying to hero for like or something like the trying to hero single trying to as well as like maybe blast that will maybe might be in the critics but like finding out about like them like side might also be like way more like an important kind of like an step for like might have been like pretty definitely and like I'm thinking that they come in powers with the like unique and like it's unique powers of like I mean we have made the power to like remotely communicate with like monsters or like aliens attack who are not like an extreme distant another one might be different. It might be how like it might be I mean also you can pick like unicorn of the communities might have someone that like alien membership which might be above the different galaxy or like to like recommend what I hope that like that boss alien might be strong enough to like take over fight enough because like Saitama might have been like the biggest of soon as they can obstacle for like the main might have been the case of the so like that fate and this might be the reason for like I mean not like been like straight away taking off like the captured hostages alien monsters like that when they were about to like register something and this might have been about like maybe Amima because of like with like communicate that Amima might have made before the alien one this might have certain like alien so yeah to like what this was the captured monster might have been like read about that and that may be the reason for like Amima like the data taken out like captain gate and so like whole monster like that which is the new so like it might be after that like that Amima might have hold on to the like plan B and it's my job in definitely to that to that lyrics about still in like even lyrics about having this like I think that number of percentage like that's just a way of like that person in the place right that actually my job in definitely a fault but fault and fit factors that like so Amema with specific line I have created so like Amema even simply how us to like to go about to like make these exact position that like Amema might have possible about to like make and like Amema much itself was like monster like communication powers right or like and I'm putting like Amema like how it might feel on this the power to be able to like communicate with like they communicate with like monsters but like Amema like also have the power to like be able to like when to control monsters that like, might be like so definitely that way like it might have been through Amema like which is like power to that aspect and control monsters like and that exactly like creating situations like and the material it's a simple form of like about this for instance from like the past might have been definitely concept to like monster like an incoming monster attacked by a special kind of monster might be each kind of might have been the event like it might have been coming on that might have definitely that way that created that for instance into like a reality using this like through in a stealthy way through this like monster control for that by controlling the monster it might have been what might have this might be how like might have gotten like personally that thing might have been like definitely known for so definitely that it might have been like the plan B of the Kamema that to that to ladies about to totally that eventually make a friendship to about like this, like I think like 6 months like time period. The within which that between work will be contained in that way to that have that then that affect the world's attention fall on to like to go about like this ultimate person because due to that this person being like the most serious of like the person that to go about having a growth of industry that might be at least the limit that they like have like and that particular attention fall on to like persons like to go about so that like on that very day like on like the 6 month time period to go like I mean must be able to like like you know, planning on like getting that actually for next term of the pandemic is working like to put only for months like pay and say that I think you know and then of course like I mean want to definitely want to be able to like do something like the prior to that I mean might have uh done might have came up with might have been only to like create like more for the project and like price of like the more to definitely eventually have put Saitama into like an extremely like difficult kind of that situation by totally eventually upsetting like Saitama's network is like King as well as like Gino. Definitely about like King as well as Gino that was that makes it a great fun for like Saitama's web like to selling stock and trying like when I find out it was a big figure definitely mentioned before that is maybe the reason for that combined appeal I think like that was might be that really drawing like the house of like might be that they're going to like we must like the call to walk into that protein like item will be facially weight until next item needs to form so that like at that point walk into like still be like close into one like item so that that and most likely maybe getting some maybe having some sort of like with this like you might be planning on like that way turning putting like genome into like that thing into next see like state or like an concept kind of like state using that not exactly in a sleep like state and so that like walking to like then okay like walking to like the plan and basically this might be to like then update them and basically referring them to like the most important and then at that point for like anima to that basically show in some of like anomaly and basically to that try to mind to like an extreme the kind of like and if we there are systems like item of the that by bringing like amount system towards like item of like item with like the taking of that item of like systems of like thing as well as like team if item of disability to that take that monster cell and turn item of into that monster. So this might be like that my point is strategy that like I mean not my came down would might agree to actually throw the monster cell strategy to that eventually turn item into like a monster. So that way that the that way that 100 of the times that activity every like might be only with that control item and that way like get rid of that stuff item would be by probably a item into like absolute you know monster subordinate uh, uh, without like stuff like the word not realizing about the for that actually good lack of the something that we play that absolute savior single one and only savior and like you know by probably that fighting off meetings like the monster Saitama while currently controlling the Saitama can be really than a fake acting one of them that the word that is like coming out like strong standing like the monster Saitama by controlling and like willing to like offer and take that Saitama like controlling Saitama would be definitely might be done that way for like the stuff like the in that way for the world to like only to see that I mean much more that have to single one stage or as well. This might be definitely an instance that we so like that way for maybe for the different like it's like still that might be like an sprint hero thing that basically in 2030 like that I think both things that kind of like you know and like yet like I'm bring like silver frank as well as like will be managed to like manage to that not fall victims to that most likely that sleep sleep powder or something kind of like a weapons like a movement that still that guy that would be probably using at like the house of like would be like the scenario that and so that way like I'm totally talking like while he will be like any the scenario of that this guy will be making both uh king as well as like attacking both like king as well as like Gino and like he will be like rushing up on the curtains so and at that point I must definitely like the view of like Silverman as well as the movie chasing after like this and after get like a bit of like them maybe getting caught by a certain extent of like the sleep out. So like they might not be like instantly able to like chase after him. So like a possibility that in that way I'm going to bring like a form like Garou, like I'm looking like Garou versus like absolutely definitely Garou right now and the probably deciding to like basically to clear a step a bit and like get some food and like feed up and get just like energy back before like having before like Garou will be setting up will be challenging even more complicated as will be like the Garou will be to die. So like that way Garou like setting up and then the like everyone like Garou being most like step now but like in fact like up like getting like energy back that I'm ready for like this mysterious guy who might be like a hero like basically with like character like as well as like King would be only by your points and they're running into that at that point is like so like even those three heroes like and you can gather at that point most likely only recognizing King alone like Captain Arc and so like at that point, like definitely Garou will be talking from like King, like the same King most likely in the canon context can say that like most likely this like this is like carrying King like with an arc. So definitely Garou would be like getting in like the way and like while doing that interaction like Garou would be slowly assuming that basically was that mysterious guy that like he was like spoken from to like maybe even to be King from the branch like Garou would be so like definitely Garou definitely won't be like it can pass and like that way like fight between like Garou the Federation to a fight and like it definitely would be like trying to like bypass Garou and if as soon as they will get considered from the next planet they feel like the master of position but like Garou definitely not allowing that and like that way a fight between like King and Garou happening in this like Garou would be only start much great to get all like and Garou getting like anything like Garou now they need to get all like only for just the learning and defeating like the scenario that and that's exactly at that point when I'm like citizen and like silver fight as well as like product will be straight away like to save Genos as well as like King that on that way like Sam probably are coming into like the at that point it's like the scenario that I'm and at that point I'm feeling like that absolute rematch between like Garou versus like the team of like Silver and Silver happening like the scenario that but like this time unlike in like the previous time while I think that Garou was like in the extremely exhausted and injured state while fighting off against the of like Silver as well as this product like since like this time that one person that already only has like cannot be bad like I'm definitely I'm probably looking for to be like an Indian fight and like that of only stuff happens like all expectations of like film fight have you know in and only in the that we offer any film fight as well as like this product like this scenario that I'm right and I'm looking like Garou without saying a word like this would be walking away from that and like the player was like at that point for like both silver tank as well as level sort of like shouting out to the because like at that point like they simply would be feeling absolutely embarrassed and would be won't be able to like accept their defeat against like the home they at present will be seen as like an absolute failure due to like God of like worthy to be like that absolute what for like and the as person like every single friend as well as like probably seeing God as that absolute failure. So definitely like then simply won't be accepting he have to like accept that defeat against like Garo. So like rather than that like I'm then shouting out to like Garo like probably take them out to finish it and like to take them out to like the scenario that I'm but like after that, that went down straight away, ignoring like the two of the children and telling them that basically that like they had once like unforgettable most like maybe it might be on the silver time like from the aspect in every single of my trained mentally the case. So suddenly Gav at that point like a serious face like turning like maybe not even looking back at them and like telling them that basically they had trained the fact that like they had trained Garo at one point in that the past like basically definitely it has its own role to play in like Garo's strength from that point on. Even after like Garo leaving like the role that basically it's spiraling into like Garo's strength growing up and that reaching at the point of level of strength Garo at that person and having Garo like top of having Garo even surpassing to like teachers like Silverfight and like the Mundial underline that Garo is telling them. So for that like Garo is like totally grateful for them both but that doesn't mean that basically if that they get in that they can get in that Garou way path again. Because if they do so, that Garou won't become the anymore. Once you the lines of in that Garou in a cold man line. In a cold tone would be that telling the and it would be totally walking away while like only ignoring like the one repeated shouting by that single line like to like take the like scenario that I'm looking for and so that but we are going to mention that Garo definitely would be might be totally unaware of that thing but not having any power. So like even though the person might be totally absolutely like would be assuming that like thing was like one activity response that of the you know uh, along the lines like Garo making. So like with that Garo dictating that person, that or that person that this guy who would have Garo might have think that is he would have repeated thing. And basically on top of that, like straight away from the inspiration that Garo between also repeating that silver fine and but like one versus two fight against them as well. That this like a repeated scenario on the front of it that absolutely clear extreme boost of that confidence that scenario that is just the thing. So like I'm looking at speaking my preparation like at that point like Garo while Garo will be walking away from like Silver Frank and like sort of like Garo would have like mindset on basically that like Charlie Garo has like only have reached like that extreme level of strength where like Garo won't be feeling that fear of like basically heading straight towards like the fear of negotiating and chanting all the remaining top heroes like the heroes and taking them out on single-handedly. This is like Garou even recently had even taken photos against like a bunch of heroes single-handedly recently as well, even while being in a screening situation as well. Recently because Garou was like abducted and taken into that and everything. So definitely all collectively would be giving Garo that actually fear to the confident or like or confidence and like into the Garo feeling as if like the like Garo's next job would be like as like the hero sitting like straight away got to like the hero to and to like straight away take down all the remaining top heroes and like the hero position. And after doing so for like a Garo to like make his like next job which would be definitely at like the Monster Association and like to take down like Monster King ROT as well as like spend that like the Monster Association. And that way for like Garo to like be able to like achieve that goal and make that absolute impact as that's one and only strongest monster in like the world with like the throughout like destroy like with like possible put that monster side but like about to like destroy like then that you have like the figure of opposition as well as like the monster that one and only to be most powerful monster like that way Garo might be hoping to like make that impact but like a scenario to be that as Garo will be like stepping walking away from that finger point as well as like his sort of after visiting them like at that point the number of like the like that two monsters who are like suddenly like spying on the Garo on like them slowly stopping Garo and then them telling Garo then it would be absolutely pleased with that Garo's like achievement and like seeing witnessing Garo's like fighting and strength to this contender so definitely them straight away telling Garo to like continue according to like the orders given to like Garo by monster thing and bring like that bring that up like one of like the hero to like the monster position and as soon as possible that so like going to like lead like the monster planet turn into like monster and like be part of like the team and they will be totally proud to be proud to have like I remember like will be like in an extremely loud manner like those two monsters would be talking about and telling the to those point like I'm at that point specifically after like even defeating that second administration that when Garo would have defeated in similar time as well as that definitely so Garo will be straight away will be telling them to like step aside if they don't want to be taken out like to be alone when I Garo will be making that absolute correct. So like that would be totally would be given the feeling as if that they had that and Garo will be at that point telling them that basically that and he was only fake acting from like the base of the monster opposition totally different the extreme exhausted and tired and wasn't strong enough to like take on like the monster opposition and like that way like in order to like escape from like the monster opposition Garo like fake acting and Garo certainly not going to do again into that soldiers of like failure the monster opposition here and like Garo straight away talking back to both two monster that regarding both two monster and then straight away attacking Garo and Garo is taking but out. It's like the simple scenario that I'm looking at. That way, like Garo eventually like like Russian to like the hero association by the time Garou again to like the hero association. By then like I'm different like all the heroes like the team of like the top class heroes the huge team as well as like the team of like the small team of like Tornado as well like them all uh including like second guest as well all of them by then will have head over to like the master association in the case of it's like the scenario and that definitely I'm probably studying about be a trap set by to definitely to instantly take out like the entirety of like instantly turn like the entirety of like the majority of like the top rank heroes of like the heroes into like monster. Actually, will be really certain that like the majority of like the almost like all or like the majority of like the rank heroes in like the heroes didn't point that will be getting the to like the monster of in the stage like at that point definitely that the a trap will be perfectly set by like the monster that like the monster for that according to the stealthy communication between like Amimos and like this definitely not very interesting. So definitely this time I'm might have concealed like identity and that way like the communication might be in a stealthy manner, might be also definitely not very interesting. Definitely like that way like this like organization that sent like machine got Z5 like the robot machine got Z5 like that definitely might be like that organization like head definitely might be definitely not very interesting. So this might be the reason for like the dealings between like commercial opposition and community most likely at present not being transferred to the relevant range. So uh so like definitely that so due to that basically like aminos like past experience of like basically the monsters in like the alien monsters in like the past in the activity about the real actions like what make up in aminos sleep and everything. So this might be the reason for like aminos like person most likely that dealing in with in a certain manner might be the case and the might be within that like uh uh the person that's like controlling that who control metal knight in that time might be definitely on the different like might be like the person who might be definitely secretly allied to like definitely and might be like that maybe like the and science like who might have been even behind like the incident of like the backstory of like Xenos of like that Xenos like losing that like family in that the what I think that basically that tragic backstory of like Xenos like might be connected to that the villains of done by most likely just like realistic science and uh, according to maybe like the owners of like coming up but and like that attack might have been carried out by metal might that might be also what might have happened certainly so, certainly like and definitely that way like and that in like the actual different situation might be definitely metal knight even going off by the robot metal knight going off by itself to like take down like a something like everything definitely might be according to like the strategic plan of that and like follow of like and like the sign might be that is definitely mentioned like definitely like that way be great might be definitely to since like Metal Knight is known as like a member of the group, also to like definitely I mean not to be a person to be think that basically the phenomenon of need for like Metal Knight to be like known by the identity of like Metal Knight and for like have to have like Metal Knight as well join like the monster of the as like to strengthen of like the core strength of like the monster of the definitely lag. It might be Metal Knight itself that might have like that secret find might have domestic crimes might be hiding somewhere in like the Monster Association. We present somewhere in like the Monster Association base and that will be probably allied to like a the Monster Association and everything and might be in that like I might have given that absolute transformation most likely to Black Metal Knight and turn it might be Metal Knight itself that it's like upgraded and more powerful transform form which might be like committing what further implemented. So like G4, like the robot G4, that in like the past, like basically that was like I think targeting thing, I think, in like the past, like basically that might have been a prototype before like prototype and it might have been a G4 might have been a test robot for like the eventual creation of that G5. Of like ultimate robot G5, mission bomb G5 might be like that situation, brain. So that this might have been like the case definitely not. So like definitely this like the fact that like might index the cost like it has like I think like theory like that alien mothership like attack was like totally defeated and basically while like Metal Knight I think was like like checking the rotation, like if at the right thing that basically Metal Knight had one Genos, I think, about like basically not getting too close to Amema, like basically that one Genos such a way the concerned man of like, and the fact that like basically the scientist is controlling Metal Knight like just now recently like basically want like the child emperor like the hero of the child emperor that basically to like not everyone around him along this line like this might be totally like the anti warning like the child emperor about like this like villainous organization that they need to be more afraid of rather than like the monster of opposition like along this lines of like similar kind of like a warning that all this might be totally an have to take action by like that will scientist be like perfectly controlling make it who might be the person controlling my that person who be most likely controlling machine world the and might be secretly allied to MMF and like it will be MMF that will be the community and it will be part of that villains organization that about which like himself might have told the like the child about and all that might have been like that as fake acting of like the fake acting of like that scientist which we might have done multiple times in like the past against like through Metal Knight against like Xenos as well as the person against like the child and to like make himself seem and appear innocent and genuine and convincing to that the remaining heroes like might be like that your different situations just make my that could have been from some sort of different like Garou that could be making it to like the hero position and at that point I was like Garou being that absolute shock and surprise of that basically we absolutely no hero of the job person that like the hero position and like usually definitely at that point like I'm like the officials there like I'm like some Garou getting them like I'm that out of my that like all the heroes out rank was top as rank was having that to like the most of the position game. So like at that point, like this feeling worried that basically Charo is seeing like the possibility of like basically uh of that especially like Charo recently having spent time and like in the position. Charo might be feeling like strongly like the possibility of like the monster of the army being passed on that sort of the and the team of like of the crisis should get up the line and like that battle like the possibility of like um, the team of that top ranker was getting defeated by like Motor Association monsters would be like that such a possibility will be created that like fear within the solely legal like the pattern like now feeling that like that happens then like that be like all the attention and spotlight would be going through like the Motor Association would be along the line like Jaro would be feeling and definitely like the credit for like taking out like the theory by like that definitely Jaro definitely won't be about unwilling to like hand over to like the monster of it. That would be like the last thing Jaro would want like as like a credit to like use might be like against the women. So like that aspect of the same like Jaro would be like setting off at that point so straight away to like the monster of the is like to bring down and at that point the Garo will only feeling more confident and Garo will also think that like by bringing down by taking on like the entirety of like the heroes which is like the monster together and like bringing both of them down like it would be the alone that at that point in front of like the entire world to be creating that absolute single ultimate impact and to be known as like the one and only powerful monster that has defeated both like the top heroes as well as like the monster association. Uh, so like Garo for me come to such taking such a decision and like working off towards like the monster association that point is like the scenario that I'm looking at. Like definitely I'm looking like by then like I'm like one of like the flying monsters I'm looking like would be would be spotting like it's like unconscious or like unconscious like genomes as well as like seeing basically lying on the floor and the and then deliver most likely that um, that like flying monster like a bit of like noticing realizing or like recognizing maybe think alone or like in other means like rather than so definitely that monster like updating thing as well as like seen and totally taken that to like the monster association based like and while I may not like a government might be totally planning like basically bring down Saitama by turning Saitama into like a monster by to threat like totally that way to like for Saitama to like eat like the threat of like taking out like Genos as well as like as well as king to like that because Saitama to like take like the monster cell and turn Saitama monster like basically Amema might be also having a plan B and that might be like the worst scenario if that Saitama fails to like still like take the monster cell and it's a like possibly even for us to like the monster association like for that like I'm thinking like uh if that happens like that definitely that I'm probably that communities might be probably having plan B and which might be to like definitely like in such a situation that I mean like and like some of the opposition would be forced to like fight and take on like to hop on side and like in such a situation for like the battle to still be extremely difficult for like side command to like fight like definitely I mean like plan B might be to like only uh might be to like only like force the athletics and individual like to force like for to force things to like only take like some of the like as well as like definitely that's the reason for like connecting dot G5 percent like at like in like the percent at like the amount of opportunity as well as like prove that it might be only that was taken of like second pretending to like go up to like the amount of opportunity to like to save that hostage and everything. So in actuality, like again as well, like might be roughly part of like Amina, like plan to like probably to use these two more to use like second as well as like making what required to like to probably quickly offer NTP GMOs and it to like the clear between like the second or like the one D might be having like the power to most likely take control over like the scenario that we will. So that way, to simultaneously have like things turn into like a more basically to take control of like things and turn things against like by the time site and make it to like the way like the more even if like site and reviewing to take like the more would be along the lines of like the plan B that I mean would have. So that like in that battle that we in a situation where like site and will have to like fight up against like this like and as well as like in a situation where he would have to like fight up against like the genus as well as like things who have turned into like more of yeah like both would be like at that point attempting to like take out fighting Saitama like not as like a training at all but like to definitely take out Saitama like in such situation like Saitama would be getting like totally like totally weak and easily at that point like for like totally monster for as well as Omenos as well as like all the remaining monster of the group and monster to like the monster opposition to like simultaneously attack Saitama in like that weak situation and so that like Anonymous will be totally hoping that Saitama charge the beta so that like in like that way they might be able to like collectively from that combined like might be able to like take off Saitama and we are like Anonymous might have also plan to supplement might be also like a huge main important reason as well for this like organization at this present like we is sending like meeting the fight like at present and like the amount of association and everything. And taking as well as like about the head of like or might be tied up and linked to like this like multiple benefit plans of like Mima to like down side of like that sort of like a possibility that I'm okay, so like the freedom right now, especially for like the also definitely have absolutely no money at all. Only just need to pay for like the need in like right now. One like like the scenario that I was like so like I'm spending right now for like the very same guy who was like talking about it like ideology was like with him being totally against like people committing crime to burglaries and stealing people like the monster surrounding campaign like and that very same Garou right now turning into such an absolute hypocrite and like right now the something that can like right now it's like superior skill and stuff like to be stealing money from like the calculation definitely paying at like the restaurant from like the food and have so it's like the and that way people think that like doing that advocate right and something that very same exact crime that he was just now totally against. So that's the that was kind of okay, so like this like the one popular that I'm different that the popular that I'm different for like Saitama losing his like wallet right now as well like exactly might be happening at like the very same exact restaurant that like Garrus right now eating might be like the case like for the popular that I'm different so like the other popular exactly that I'm looking for so for like both Saitama as well as Garou not being able to like take for like that have like so that we have to put like them totally like the song of like getting extremely infuriated with like uh, what Garou has to like Saitama and like totally like shouting at them to all the fishes and all the what like this one for like that in their whole state is like the scenario that I'm looking at right. That way like I'm looking like while doing like the dishes like would be when like I'm looking like Saitama and Garou would be like together doing like and then basically at that point I'm looking like just like the interaction between that Garou and like Saitama only happening while doing the dishes and then looking like through that interaction like I'm definitely Garou saying Saitama will be told straight away a feeling that like Saitama was like on the way to like some fantasy competition of like playing here. Would be along the lines of the playing Garo straight away actually about like Saitama definitely Garo didn't know any at all as for like Saitama like being part of the team also definitely not good. So definitely I'm looking like Saitama at that point telling Garo that like he's like an actual hero. And like the heroes association and Saitama even revealing it's like Hapai what I said to definitely Garo and the that in a realistic manner like a Sri that like basically Saitama like totally like joking around and basically talking to like Garo and like Garo like refusing to like believe Saitama no matter how much like and that totally getting Saitama to be insecure and Saitama was really trying to like convince Garo that like Saitama is like an actual hero but like Garo like totally refusing was like the scenario plan. And I'm looking like eventually like that interaction going on and I'm looking most likely maybe towards like the end of like Celtic while that as well as like Saitama will be done doing like therapy applications and all the work like I'm looking it would be at that point that I'm looking that and Saitama would be not the feeling as if like the same his like powers superhero powers to like convince the or things like this and that I'm looking at definitely regarding like Garo as well like I'm just maybe that's like not feeling as if like basically displaying such like powers and basically maybe panic of like all the people like response so like in like instead like Garo probably you feel like you can feel like probably doing all the different like at the response and all that and like over the scenario that so like maybe by the time that they would be forward this went on the like well then that feels like that day like I'm like and I think it's about by doing all the work and that way then getting like to works and that and then falling and like them starting to be that get along with and like becoming great friends so like to be as like Saitama and Gao will be almost will be none of like the friend with the about to like pathways from like the spawn and like if you go at that point like that like Saitama was even thinking about like asking Garo as to like about as to like what he does of like along his lines and like at that point like Garo was like mind telling Saitama that basically seems like the hero of the is like person that and that way like that shocking realization like of like it was like at that point like happening for like Saitama only at that point is like looking at it that it's very like that got out from that book like some of it so when it's like the scenario that I'm looking at was like totally like a very much for like at that point that even though by then like Saitama and Garo you know got down when like I'm looking at listed at that point like on that shouting grade at that Saitama would definitely absolutely like determined to like totally desperate to like so we have a fight against like Garo definitely because of like so far like I haven't heard about the Garo taking out on like on heroes and everything. So that leads Saitama we have that most likely we have that that have to curiosity to like and that just great for to like at least get that up with independence and fight on like those like series. So definitely like Saitama will be especially like how fight with like Garo. So that definitely I'm like Saitama at that point deciding to like so telling Garo that basically like Saitama send up and is like looking for like the hero hunter Garo. So probably that and like Saitama straight away challenging Garo to a fight and Garo straight away once again would you know some won't be able to like take Saitama's field at all and will be straight away listening to Saitama and will be telling fight to like Saitama and will return back when like Saitama at that point will be deciding to like actually to like make it evident to like Garo that at that point that basically that Saitama is like serious about like him being a hero and him wanting to fight against like Garo. And that way like Saitama actively unleashing a small fraction of like Saitama's like throw strike and like throwing a punch uh, at like Garo. And at that point, at that very moment, it said like Garo instantly like Garo's like senses would be acting up instantly and like realizing that immense like potential and power coming from that punch that like Saitama did. So like Garo at that point straight away dropping it is like with that approach shock facial expression was like the scenario that I was so like was like it was only at that point that like Garo she actually realizing that like I'm like serious in that time about like being like something was about him being a terrorist that was like the scenario that I'm like so definitely at that point I was feeling like things would be getting like extremely interesting for like and exciting for like not only Saitama but also for like Garo definitely Garo will get that point straight away in that that's quite between like Saitama and Garo would be breaking out at that point itself it's like the scenario that I'm going so like Garo so bring like like the fight will be beginning itself and like Garo will be repeatedly getting blown away by that the events like Frank coming out of like Saitama reflect the scenario that I'm going through. So that due to like all that for good content of the job of against the second that by then it's like the scenario that I'm getting so definitely I was going that fight getting seriously intense and like Zaro sees you realizing that like I'm like by far like strongest like hero for in a fight in that like Zaro is like content that point has like 4,000 years and definitely I'm like due to like Zaro like continuing on that food like definitely like our own game will be getting to like and by then we'll be having that form of like when that is like out of like and of feedback and will be pumped for like the fight and everything like this now like that way like Garo condition like that fight between like Saitama and Garo will be simply because in Garo to like bring out like Garo's like actual force fight so the moment like Garo will be about to like bring out like that actual close friend like Garo. At that point is when I'm like I cannot know that you're feeling the fall. And basically the fight getting interrupted at that point and Garo getting his full control at that point. And like Garo definitely not taking advantage of that situation. Like and Garo stopping at that point. Yet like Garo getting the picture. Like I'm saying entering like the fall and I'm putting on that point among the day for like support being combined up like silver punch or like from Lizard. Like and that for like them I never remember telling like about like those like situation of like not likely abandoned to and like by then thing as well as that you know what I was other than by that makes me like stuff like that like I'm so there's like that's not that I'm really worried. So definitely and like I'm just putting like most likely the background that like that is the guy might have put might have put that in the track as well as like some lot of science as well as like but in that particular kind of situation that like they might have not been like they might start intellectually like go on the chase after that mysterious guy who and then who are like that like Gino as well as like thing like person are that so like Saitama straight away like going next off and basically straight away looking at like Garo and straight away telling Garo that like he'll continue this fight like later right now Saitama has like, an even more like bigger urgency it would be enough to like fight and only Garo and like straight away Saitama would be like using more of like actual power than basically swiftly leaving that area with like scenario that I'm making for me. Straight away it was like they're getting off to that side of home in that set out that what with like you're doing to be with like the person like team like thing and everything from by asking to like that as well as like back and like with that I'm making. So definitely my theory of thinking for like at that point I'm pretty like as like I'm already leaving like I'm like definitely like that when Garo will be definitely for feeling adored to like let Saitama leave. But like even before like Garo to like even then to like next attack like Saitama would have Saitama's like great strength would have for so the events then that area with that exchange feels it's like one person out of that or like I'm just in that white Saitama was using the ending like Garo would be asking Saitama that where Saitama lives. But like Saitama would have left even before like Garo would have even completed that and that level of movement after that. That way like Garo being absolutely frustrated because like definitely from who that fight against like Saitama Garo look like this form like Garo that when that like Saitama like from a zero of like like or like this form of individual set like Garo has a face of into the line. So next year when Garo they totally just try to continue that fight against like two forty find Saitama and continue that fight against that Saitama. That's how lost it like the scenario that I'm and like that way to go to be desperately and the frustrated man will be something all around running all around like the city like searching for like looking for like Saitama and like the scenario by while Saitama by then made it like Saitama sound and will be that having that impact about like the details that come into like the direction of like take as well as teams from like the as well as like simplifying like things scenario that will be the and that was also something like maybe for like a scenario where like in a funny and like complicated manner like in maybe like I see for instance like left like Saitama would be that from like back to like Saitama or worried about like the affection of like king as well as like Gino about running like at that point itself I'm between like five year points and like after Saitama would be leading like some created like the that mysterious guy that while unlocking that while taking Genos as well as like thing that basically by sheer coincidence like showing up on that exact area going through that exact area like and running into like running into like an absolutely straight up like the it was like the other possibility that I'm going for. So like I'm suffering like at that point like the frustration of God like not being able to like uh, continue like the fight against like Saitama like I'm an area that when God was taking it out on that hero who would have by sheer fortune like crosses up at that point like now is like the other possible scenario that I'm observing and I'm saying this. Also, the claim and the criticism right now is that there is the women right up might have switched from like the hero to vision expert and maybe recently might be like the case that also like the possibility that I'm and that way like I'm referring right now it might be woman right up that might be like that uh, form of hero that being limited stated at like that restaurant as for like as like a security. Uh, might be like the case that we might consider interesting. Like that way, like one Saitama as well as like fundamental treatment like Saitama as well as that Garou would be like doing them like and bring like at that point. Certainly, I would bring that moment right. Certainly, will be having just that ethics and everything. So certainly, I was like even though moment right. I think that right now it's like in good terms with like Saitama still have so many like moment right not pay for like Saitama uh, um, not being able to clear the response. So like yet like like right would be that the thing that has most interaction between like the driver Saitama as well as Garou while like Garou and Saitama would be like doing all the research at like the response. So like the clinical complex scenario that is different and definitely different that the fundamental thing might be moment right like that might be like that X okay or X percent like so moment right might have only heard of like this like uh, heard of heard of this like news about like being this like fear of but like that being right maybe due to like at like fundamental should not being part of like the also might be the case so he might be not aware that like the this like Java it's also like the possible that I'm so then without realizing this like I'm from like Saitama like right as well as like Garou like the three of them they actually interacted with each other and uh, like form that bond of critic between like each other while Daro and like Saitama to during the middle is like taking to open up academic program of friend. Also the clean and program right now is for like Blizzard as well like so different might be not having any money on either even though she might be right now from like on finding out about like Saitama like concentration like I'm from like Blizzard like totally so then that point I think total advantage of that situation to like attempt to like convert Saitama and basically yes to get like Saitama to like lead up to like to pair for like Saitama like would at like the response like those scenarios that I'm right and like that way like Saitama like even though in an extremely reluctant manner like still totally letting go of this like ego and pride and like totally pleading to Blizzard to like pay for like Saitama's need at that sort of stuff. But like I'm at that way like I'm at that point that Blizzard in an extremely or confident and satisfied manner like and that would be checking for her product and like her product as well. She might out of the forgot to like bring it like in the scenario that I'm into the right and my passenger. Okay, so like being on the same question right now, it's basically Blizzard right now would be most likely thing that if we by taking snacks, by stealing 70 percentage of like the uh, success point of like if that one like Saitama defeat like the hero member Garou like through like 70% of that success point like Wizard might be talking like Wizard definitely will be able to that way through that 70% of point they actually able to like surpass finding achievement goal and like surpass like sister program would be along the lines like just at present would be definitely absolutely perfect. So like without really forgetting like perfect about it that kind of without like probably making it to like but that's 20% like the points that without either making it to like all the way to like trying to in like the F class and that way like replacing Tornado and basically putting Tornado back towards like a rank 3. While without would be making it to like a rank 2 would be like one more thing that like along the lines like the song would be saying at present or like the song would be thinking of like even more of a great possibility like that with that 70% points like making it just all the way to that making it to that the top you know that position of that rank one in that class in that way even pushing along with like program of pushing like the number one current number one of class as well like behind the like these school might be like the opposite that like Wizards in India right now would be definitely would be in an confident manner who would be seeing also the playment members and then seeing members that live that like present like Garou as well as like Saitama as well as like himself would be most likely at like present at like the same very same response might be like the day the playing of the so like definitely with like the writer claiming to like have all this like intent as to like what like the something like looks like I'm different than the lab without considering like a different lab definitely considering my difference that like the start of definitely I would have forgotten her wallet and like that way like once like Saitama after that like Garou would be like doing the research like I'm different like at that point definitely like Blizzard would be right there and Blizzard would be even seeing Garou yet like Blizzard who claims to have all this like index would be still not to won't be like even realizing that like Garou is like the hero of looks like while Garou is standing right there right in front of like Blizzard it's like the scenario that I'm looking about. So like that way like I'm looking like these two like setbacks of like like that eventually Saitama totally falling off on Blizzard and making eventually that way making Blizzard like totally look focused and like that way like will be totally affecting like Blizzard like confidence doing along the lines of like terms of scenario that I'm looking over and okay, so like the league of Dreamson right now is definitely from like Saitama to like right now probably get lazy like and like midway like I'm from like Saitama deciding to like not capture like the DineNDasher like the scenario that I'm looking over. So definitely I'm looking like Saitama the DineNDasher will definitely be definitely okay. And like Saitama midway while chasing up like Garou it's a digital like won't be making far before like it's like Saitama will be getting lazy and like will be rethinking pushing like the like that's up like the line and like because of like Saitama will be getting lazy and thinking of like maybe like you know thinking along the lines of like maybe Saitama should only interfere and actually help out if it's like if it's like a situation where like it's like an monster attack or anything. So the Saitama totally getting lazy and thinking that since it's not like a extremely intense like monster attack situation, like Saitama would be totally getting lazy and like deciding stopping midway and deciding not to like capture like the line and dice up and then especially with like the sun persons like Saitama will be totally getting comfortable and we think that definitely he will be able to like they get like the start doing that pay for like the need along the lines like Saitama would be uh, feeling more confident and like that way Saitama returning back to the selective midway and not going after the like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like at that point I'm looking like Saitama would be getting far too comfortable and basically like definitely like once like and that way like I'm looking like the start definitely with like Saitama telling the start has to like scale the pin for like just eating possible fry like I'm doing like that would be putting in like the start totally getting frustrated and deciding to like eat like the industry right so like by the time like Saitama would return back to like the table like then the start could have even like the industry right like the scenario that I'm doing right. So like at that point I'm discovering like the once like it will be time for them to like and then like Blizzard would be still frustrated like Saitama offering that and like Blizzard would be in a sea like an intense space like this will be staring at like Saitama and like as like the sun and I know from the man will be about to like the sun soon they realize that like she had forgotten to like fate of war. So like at that point like that being that absolute shocking to of like a surprise for like Saitama as well. So like the scenario that I'm right that way like and at that point I'm just bring like them probably and at that point I was bring like strong honor like basically shouting at like Saitama as well as like with that to like probably do all the dishes for that entire day like within our and at that point itself I'm just bring like Saitama as well as like the third and even hearing basically like even seeing like people working like strong like holding like Garou and like bringing Garou back to like the sense like within our level. So like about the jump from and like in the scenario to be like an exact similar situation as like of like everything kind of like a scenario from the frames and just like I don't know we have like similar yeah like different kind of like everything scenario happening to like Garou as well. But it's like before like entering like the strong like Garou was like talking about like was having this like self conversation with like himself about like how about like his ideologies, how he was like against like people like going to take advantage of like the monster and basic situation to like to all the other and like feeling and all those trying so definitely everything like white sign and dancing that midway like everyone like Gao would be like remembering all those like if we Gao as well would be feeling that absolutely and that way like Gao as well would be rethinking like this and would be like starting to like walk back to like the restaurant and like they will be going up to the DineNDasher and they will be going up back to like the restaurant and like definitely like that way like I'm going to find like three of them like with the Blizzard Saitama as well as like yeah and I was like it would be at that point like Moon and Rider that would be like holding Garo and like totally like Moon and Rider would be totally believe without realizing Garo was like the person like Moon and Rider would be totally believing that it's me from the lights that he was like actually able to like stop like the fear of something and basically bring that like the that's actually able to like stop that the line and that's like in that final as so like at that point like I'm like definitely everyone in like the restaurant would be clapping at like moment right and like basically like right moment right like that it's talking about like moment right have still got it in the line terms of making one be facing right and like happy moment right and like bringing Garo back to like the restaurant and basically that way like I'm just trying that moment right like in the like Saitama as well as like so like I'm different like Garo Saitama as well as like like only those like tradition and while like moment right we just stand there and like definitely have that whole interaction with like catching back on the music between like with like Saitama and having that interaction with like Saitama which will eventually spiraling into like them all four of them having that action conflict between each other and like getting along well without while none of them will be realizing that that like Garo like that he is like the scenario that I'm with and Garo definitely won't be at all interested in like Moonlight because like the Liam like by the time that Moonlight will be capturing Garo like it will be back to this like Garo than like Moonlight have absolutely more fun at all. So like that way like even while Garo might be like through the announcement like Garo still might have heard that like about like that way we will realizing that like Moonlight like so you know still like Garo would be that once like right we can think about that it will be most likely while Java would be like having that rating option like would be done better than that. So like while Mumbai will be capturing Java at that point so like it will be on the spot like Java will be able to sense that like right like would be no strength at all. And hence won't be at all interested in that fighting moment right it's like the scenario that I'm looking for. And at the same time, like Garo would be also not at all even aware that like like the start I think it's like uh, not even a class A superhero. So like I'm just definitely in that definitely in that Garo won't be even aware that like this are like even a hero. It's also like my different interest. So like definitely my different watching right now for that this person like Dario like basically being targeted and attacked by like this like fear that would be definitely right now instantly reminding taking Garo back to Garo's own backstory and reminding Garo back of his own different path where like he wants to actually in a kind of like similar manner that my screen force could always like take the role of like the monster that was like similarly that attacked by that spears as well. So like since like definitely the such uh, dark past in that arrows like so definitely like it could be instantly that could be what like right now would be flashing into like arrows memory that person that way like I'm like straight away right now it's definitely like saving Tarayo and basically would be that with this like near person like will be that with like share self will be instilling that fear onto like the onto like the fear of like Tarayo who are like any Tarayo like the scenario that emerges over the and definitely uh, and definitely at that point and I'm wondering maybe at that point like them as well might have been like playing like hero as well as like most of my team also the case by sure points might have been the person so like Tario might have been exactly like how like I was like like Tario might have been might be right now getting forced by his like peers to like play the role of like the monster and hence like uh, that might be like the reason for like the often like perspectives right now even like in an incentive manner like this and like to be like that is like the career is like the might be like the situation supplement so like the claim is like you are probably right now it's like showing up there and like on realizing this like Garou like on like side of like monsters like my probably that talking on like to fire like monster like okay speak from like the perspective of like monster to like the to those players who are like attacking Dario and like none of them would be even like getting anything at all that like Garo would be trying to like convey to the like the scenario clearly on confused and would be feeling that straight away thing that like Garo is like crazy like at the same time getting more person to measure by Garo like scenario and everything and at that point that's when I'm like right now so to find that would be that Saitama would be showing up there. There's like the scenario that I'm saying that with like Saitama's like outfit and everything that basically being so hero like definitely at that point in front of that Sario as well as that all of them. This where like I'm doing like the fight between that Saitama and maybe happen was like the scenario that I'm where like I'm like definitely uh, like uh, Sario would be like would be next of manner would be watching like the fight while all of like Tario's like peers who are like attacking Tario like they will be all cheering for like Saitama like the hero while Garou as like the monster who will be fighting back against like Saitama like scenario that and this is okay right so like definitely what that fight begins with the grand and the beginning like both Garou as well as like Saitama will be stopped by each other's like power like each of them won't be expected it's like a scenario that I'm looking for. It looks like Garou definitely put in that has no idea of whom Saitama is that even Saitama being part of the second world is being right. And at the same time Saitama has like no without having any idea that Garou is and that will behind that fight. And I'm also saying that definitely the major scenario that I'm friends for like the fight to definitely be intense and definitely the free like post fears of like Dario yeah throughout that fight will be cheering on for like Saitama and that will be creating that fury and frustrated but then like Garo connecting to that reminding Garo more and more of like Garo's like on dark past and basically that would be like those fears to attack like Dario like them cheering Saitama on would be ending up with that you end up after the race which would be like simply like pushing Garo's like strength to like totally match up each time like Saitama would be raising with like strength more and more like from Garo's strength to like surprising the match up to like Saitama's strength like this like the scenario this would be only surprising and Saitama like scenario but like I'm like feeling that fight and Garo would be only like see himself in like Tare would be like shocked and in a silent manner like would be watching this like fight between like Saitama uh, and like Garo like the scenario that but like I'm feeling like literally Garo like losing to like Saitama and that will be totally usually happening at a point where like Garo is suddenly shocked by like uh, the scenario where like I'm like eventually that Tario would be like at that point when you stop and remain silent while witnessing this fight between that Garo and Saitama like and eventually that Tario as well like cheering for like the hero Saitama of like the even the scenario. And that would be that absolute shock of like an absolute betrayal kind of like feeling that like Garou would have. And that would be like the point where like Garou would be at that point that would be losing his like will to like push himself in that fight and like get stronger and match up against like Saitama and that at that point I was feeling like like that would really make the thing come to think it's like the scenario that I'm really seeing like Sario like at that point Garo will totally identify as like his own version the original scene share for like the Saitama and we believe that will be something better for like that shot after that for like for Garo and at that point is when I'm Saitama was like Garou is not the scenario that I'm going to hold it. It's the scenario that I'm going to read and my favorite. Yes, and I'm definitely on premise right now that absolutely no one ever would have been able to that understand Garou at all or that is like absolute disaster to be that an absolute monster. Definitely might be like the case that even frame so that definitely everyone might be like for a lot of having such goal like a movement like Garou might have been so useful so far in life with like everyone like should be repeatedly abusing Garou of like being crazy basically so that definitely that this point with like Tario like basically being able to like see uh like being able to like accept Garou from like the way Garou does that and the things Garou is doing that is me that giving steady giving that Garou might be so little to that they found the center time that Garou might have been done greatly wishing for that while there's at least by the person and like that might be what like exactly Garou might have right now got through Tario. Uh, and this might be the reason for like Garou at that point like actually getting even goosebumps at that point through the words that of acceptance of like Garou by Tario. Uh, might be like the case definitely not today. So definitely this like the trait seeking of like validation which might only be taken within like Garou like and from that would be having a certain extent of like similarity to like Saitama's case as well. Certainly because of like Saitama probably being like far superiorly stronger than like definitely even like the strongest and like the most popular of like the front heroes and everything yeah, like the fact that like absolutely like nobody at all except for like Gino like and King like basically and very few individuals like Silverpoint even being aware of like the true extent of like Saitama true extent of like Saitama's strength like basically that as well the totally like frustrating deep down people think for like Saitama and Saitama as well will be having that side within him. So like Saitama, even to the person might be desperately wishing for that well-done. And even though right now, like Dario, like for the accepting Zaro for like the way he was like they actually gave Zaro response like and so still Zaro might be desperately having uh, that absolute desire within to get like the validation out of like the entirety of like the world. And like definitely there are always sort of like have that and like this might be like exactly the same case with like Saitama as well or like Saitama that were like people who knows like the whole extent of like Saitama's strength uh already being present through like Gino Silverpoint King so still definitely Saitama can be down to the like Saitama thoroughly that have to deserve for like to get validation from like the entirety of the board for like the extent of like superior strength of like Saitama but more than that like for like all the hero work that Saitama with that actual strength have done so far like basically for which like all the other heroes got credit for instead of Saitama like every she down there that extreme satisfactory feeling and like positive within like Saitama and like that deep desire to get that validation from like the entirety of like the world yes like for Garou as well as like Saitama would be believe strongly and strongly believing that like they genuinely deserve that validation from like when they're and this exact common fact which might totally undermine the connection into between between like Garou as well as like Saitama. That's what I'm exploring academically in like the future will be ending up putting in like Garou as well as like Saitama being that have to do that common that friend. Exactly like King well as like Genos like and like Saitama like definitely Garou eventually ending up being one of them like Saitama's like that like really like and then eventually like the Nam that I need to develop and my brain. And definitely, unlike in like Saitama's case, in like Garou's case, like definitely like the very first like actual work from like Tare or like an actual that front, like the very first such front like that Garou would be making into like would be definitely really to Saitama. It's also like dimension scenario that I'm looking at. So like I'm definitely giving to the Saitama would be that even though Tare like basically accept like which able to like access topic the way he was like I'm like the guess like usually like the case item like item out of the thoroughly being able to like understand Garou fully and basically being that first person that would be able to like thoroughly totally understand Garou and like the situation of Garou and like the past of Garou and that and different like eventually that way that Saitama would be ending up in that very first front in that like eventually like in scenario that I'm putting and that would be what eventually is reflecting in like definitely that them embracing their similarities rather than like the differences and basically and that way eventually it all resulting in like Saitama as well as like deciding to like eventually like this concludes of like deciding to like work together around like teams and king to like totally save like the people in need regardless of like the hero or like the monster attack. It's like the eventual scenario that I'm looking both Saitama as well as like eventually realizing that like the desperate insecurity of the insecurity which might that desperately insecurity which might be like the cost of like the desperate absolute desire of like that desperate validation from the gender reflective to be along the lines of different maybe like Saitama as well as like Garou usually coming down to like the conclusion of this like also like an the scenario that way like I'm looking towards like the very end of so like I'm like Saitama as well as like Garou for coming of insecurities and being able to like be okay with like them not getting that actual validation that even though they actually deserve it like them work Saitama as well as like Garou that maybe eventually reaching a point of like a mindset where like they will literally okay with like perfectly okay with like them not having that validation and instead like to keep focusing on just like action and like the work and ensuring like that they are able to like save as many as like individuals innocent individuals who are in trouble and in need is like the eventual by the man and like the okay working together with like thing as well as like like things of scenario that final maybe so wrong scenario conclusion kind of like a scenario that I'm looking for with MM thing. Okay, so like the name of the sentence right now is for like a Garou to like something it can do while hearing like the one side I'm over telling Garou is like hero name it's like the scenario scenario. So like straight away like I'm the like Garou would be totally feeling something seems off with like that hero name of like the itself and I'm like Garou would be straight away asking like Garou to like check if like search like a hero by that name in that book Garou. So like I'm definitely like that hero of like uh, tarot containing like the list of heroes like maybe that it might be maybe that it might be any of the that tarot might have got just recently after like tarot had like earlier saved like tarot from like the like attack by like the humans and vehicles. So like in the maybe like in that book like at present which like tarot holding like there might be only like the list of like class A and above class A and classes. The list of all class A and classes heroes alone might be like that the heroes that we need. So like there are only any like and that book there are only the list of like any of like, the heroes they need like class A when we like create certain of the select our like going through like the entire list of like class A as well as like class of heroes and like see like the hero name of like item like scenario plan. And then that once it's observing like Taro straight away getting triggered and like Taro definitely like produce like Taro at like present like being so grateful for like and being able to like understand Garo to a certain extent and like accepting Garo and like basically like being at present being so fond of like like we have to bring like Saitama right now having fought like Garou, DineNDasher, and basically multiple times as well as like Saitama even giving a warning to like Garou. Like I'm sure all of like the games from Garou might have carefully observed and seen all definitely right now I'm just like at that point, for the at that point, Garou would be definitely shouting back at like Saitama and like calling Saitama as like the great hero, who's not even in like the list of like heroes in like would be along the lines of referring like uh, uh would be along and like I'm looking at Taro saying that like that that like Garou is like that absolute greatest hero who saved Taro multiple times would be along the lines like Taro would be proudly shouting back at like Saitama and that would be calling Saitama as like that absolute great hero. It's not even in like the book of like heroes. So like the scenario like that I'm talking about definitely would be simply hurting Saitama like that dialogue from the Taro and the Summit. Simply would be hurting Spider-Man will be easily getting tired and Spider-Man extremely insecure and will be one Spider-Man response that that will be taken out of that. That couple with that way, Taro will be shouting back to like Spider-Man, interpreting the scenario to be like Jarvis as well, like to be laughing back loudly at like Spider-Man on realizing like Saitama like only is not even present in like it's like the like the scenario that I was thinking. And like at that point like Saitama with like head bow down would be like head down would be like walking away from like the scenario that I was thinking. And at that point, I'm looking like as like Saitama would be like disappointed, feeling disappointed in himself. Like Saitama would be only feeling that basically with the thing of that situation of that basically even to the person like Saitama not having made it not got to class A at all that gives me let alone class as well like even you know that would be always like Saitama the thing at that point. It's like the scenario will be feeling even more disappointed and like should be feeling like they like the personality that so like Saitama like slowly with his like head down like will be walking away from the Garou when from the kind like from the Garou would be like shouting out at like Saitama, laughing at Saitama and mocking Saitama, uh, uh, calling Saitama like fake hero and everything. This like personality that I'm doing. So like and the clear that point like Saitama would be also thinking of like basically the fact that like to is like feels like okay the fact that Saitama himself was like even in like a person like what he's pretending to be why he has got like Jaro DineNDasher like basically Saitama thinks himself like totally pretending to be like totally upholding justice while Saitama and playing the hero while Saitama himself uh, it's also like a diamond as well as like the situation like this. Saitama will be doing all of that. So like that way that why Saitama will be selected down walking away from the Garo. And like Garo as well as like Taro will be like shouting out at like Saitama and like walking and making fun of Saitama like and like Saitama won't be responding back at all. At like not even and Garo like putting up and as like Saitama will be walking away that and dating, walking away like I'm looking at that point is when I'm conducting the chat would be finally showing up there. It's like personality that I'm and like for example they noticing like Saitama probably acting indifferently and like basically unlike this like cool and chill self like Saitama totally appearing to be sad and disturbed and with like shut down. So like uh that at that point you would also see that how this like guy is like probably shouting and making fun of like Saitama. So like at that point, like this would be totally staring at like Garo's face, and I would like be most likely at that point, maybe recognizing that it's like Garo, like the hero, it's like personality, and like straight away, like just shouting out at like Saitama, that like the hero. So like at that point, I was like instantly Saitama getting that absolute shocking, fluffing surprise kind of like a scenario would be along the line that the feeling that Saitama would have at that time because like until that point, like Saitama was feeling absolutely frustrated due to like him like having like getting like confidence destroyed by Taro and Garo that guess he did not being intellectual thinking that but like I'm looking definitely at that point like Saitama will be able to set down will be walking away with that after the situation that one that with that figure revealing that like Garo will kill him and he stand by that like at that point like Saitama will be probably feeling pleased that like and everything along the lines of like basically taking out all that frustration straight away at like Garo by straight away or thoroughly defeating that and along the lines like Saitama will be strongly feeling at that point so like that is the point Garo like a fight uh, starting between like Saitama and goes into like Garo it's like the scenario that so like at that point like once like start with revealing that like Garou is like the two like at that point I'm going like definitely like Saitama like talking straight away like with that absolute intensity like straight away like shouting towards like the scenario and like at that point it comes to me like right up like right now we feeling with that sharp towards like dash towards like Garou itself. At that point like Garou himself will be acting up and Garou will be getting on that guard stand instantly and we'll be realizing that like we have that estimated like Saitama uh, for due to that Saitama select scenario that so like that way like straight away Garou as well to be like straight away bring out a lot of like strength and like that intense fight between like Saitama and Garou happening and while definitely with like Taro on like the sidelines will be totally cheering on like Garou while Blizzard from like the sideline to be cheering on Saitama like the scenario that I'm looking at. So definitely, Garou would be like at that point, then in the fight against like Saitama, Garou would be like from absolutely dropped by like extreme intense power that like Saitama bubble. And like Garou is really realizing, like shocking realizing that like it's like half a fight like that Garou has like only for half his opponent that like Garou served for until this point of Lenda. Like when Gulam Belenta like really got to obvious for Garou. But like even like the situation as well will be for Garou will be feeling as like extremely important and crucial situation for like like Garou to take couldn't like force electors against like Saitama. Unlike any other fights that Garou had, before we realized Garou will be solely due to like the fact of like Garou from like the silence like only personally cheering on Garou to like win to like defeat like the hero Saitama is like enough that so definitely like Garou mid battle would be like we'll be looking at like Taro, like how passionate these are. Like Taro's like cheering Taro on and Taro bit only with like features like his own past in like Taro and basically definitely that way like that flashback and like that story like Taro that's something with like Taro that basically that like just fight like Taro at least has to like win the fight to like only to like totally for that like for Taro himself to for like Taro to be able to like achieve his goal and his needs to reach that total milestone which is like public like achieving his goal of like able Garo's part like the fact that Garo couldn't like fight back and like that frustration of that definitely will get to see even to like the position that Garo like definitely because in that moment where like Garo should like fight back that Garo himself from his like top like definitely this is that moment where like Garo has to like fight back and prove himself put in a plan that Garo would need from him so like Garo definitely feeling that like you they can't afford to like person inside and it's like no scenario that episode. So definitely I'm bring that intense fight between like Saitama and Garou. So they happening like the scenario Saitama right. So that fight getting seriously intense and like Saitama like and like literally I'm bring like definitely like for Garou you totally think that basically Garou would definitely be eventually succeeding in like defeating Saitama. But like I'm main players like the fight with the big eventually I'm bring like to start getting a point at that point it's like the scenario that ran like it will most likely Silverbank telling the chart about like the situations definitely installation and printing will be definitely that king as well as that scene of most likely getting a better fight that is like so like definitely Silverbank will be calling the chart while like fight just fight feeling like Saitama and like Garo will be taking this where like Garo will be getting like current absolutely everything into that fight and will be pushing himself to reach like a far superior level of strength that he had reached before, like Bolsonaro that I was playing. So that we start getting this call and like we start straight away like telling shouting out like Saitama about like this that like that about like those things as well as Latinos getting conducted that we start to be shouting out to like Saitama like Bolsonaro that I'm playing. Because like I'm so different like even though these are uh having this like absolute greedy and selfish side to her of like basically definitely quoting that 70% success point from like Saitama to which would most likely for her to like make usually that way take advantage of like the Saitama's strength for her to like totally most totally surplus Saitama but like to eventually that way use Saitama as her like to recovery to like use Saitama as the instrument so that like that way for her to like make it to eventually surpassing her footsteps from her like even though the son will be having this extremely selfish side to her still as a like the certainty for having that genuine and like care side to her as well and definitely I'm the same to that like I'm just like even So like that point of the situation will be like Saitama has that in the fight against like the hero. That kind of kind of play still like the dark trophy not keeping that information hidden from like Saitama until like fight with like Saitama and like Garou will be over. And instead like I'm like Flavor straight away like very badly straight away shouting out to like Saitama in a genuine worried manner and telling Saitama about like Gino as well as like about like genome as well as that thing having been affected. It's like a scenario that I'm going. So definitely, definitely I'm like at that point. So like definitely you are going to be benefit aware by now. That's like how that Saitama is the like genomes as well as like it might be the gift for the gift. So definitely like that's like we are getting shouting out the to like Saitama and like straight away like I'm like the moment Saitama hears that like I'm like Saitama at that point itself, like bringing out like the extent of that side must strength with like a single attack, with like most like a single punch, and like that single attack itself, like sending Garou until that point, along with the Garou might have been literally open that like basically that Garou actually have a shot at like basically for an defeating side will be having all their folks instantly getting correct by that single attack of that Saitama, which will be sending Garo flying and basically correcting the like scenario and instantly getting defeated. Like the scenario that and like Saitama straight away like without even saying a word at all, like Saitama straight away along with like Prasad straight away running off from that garden to like for that to like Saitama's like home and basically to like check upon the situation of like the abduction of like him as well as him would be that same scenario that I'm making. So like at that point I was just like a badly injured and like defeated like hero hunter like Shadow like basically on lying on the ground and basically at that point I'm just like one Taro would be like absolutely shocked and basically with like the sudden decay of like just like as good with like of that Garo whom at that point he will be seeing as like that as good so best top hero even though Garo is like not present in like the hero would be the lines like Garo like the same Garo so like like at that point like feeling like critique of like favorite hero like might be the so definitely Taro like probably tearing up and crying while like holding while hugging like badly injured and defeated staff like Krishna that like so definitely like at that point I was different like Garo probably telling Taro that basically it's fine it's probably fine like to get him telling like Garo will be taking Taro but like at that point Taro could be like innocently telling Garo that basically that I thought that Garo was like the strongest, best, strongest like hero in that entire field that the world. To along the lines and the Garo at that point innocently telling Garo while crying and like hugging the defeated Garo like listen out there. And at that point I'm hearing that dialogue from the Garo like would be only sitting in like Garo as well tearing up. It's like the scenario that I'm experiencing like Garo at that point will be totally feeling once again uh, as like a failure, like basically as like a people and like events like for like its own backstory like would be so you know the like Garo that's one of the probably feeling is definitely memorable. Get like I'm like Garo probably shaking things off and basically Garo straight away while being in that injured and sideline situation like Garo straight away like wiping off like tears and then like Garo probably with that absolute intensity and like citizens like Garo probably looking at like Garo and like probably promising Garo that basically from this point on like like Garo is not going to like rest until like Garo brings down or authenticates and brings down like the name of like Saitama's lecturer name would be along the lines of referring like Garo would be promising to that the crime at that point is like scenario and that would be what would be like the adventure get would be cheering up Taro and being Taro that absolute hope and definitely Taro won't be giving up with like absolute hope and believe in like Garo being able to like get back the next Saitama and like eventually defeat like in a rematch will be able to like defeat Saitama. It's like the scenario that I'm going to think. And definitely I'm looking at that when they did are even telling Garo that they see and like that we would he wants to see that fight will be like Garou if it like Saitama's looking the Elonganenta and like Taro with that actual excitement at that point and confidence will be telling back to like Garou like the scenario that I'm looking. That way like I'm thinking at that point I'm looking like Garou like be setting aside because like current person like having goal ultimate goal of like basically creating that would impact as like the ultimate monster like in front of a thing that affect the board like that goal like Garo straight away setting aside solely for like Saitama. That clear Garo at that point that declare himself that he should like current ultimate he will only go chasing after that goal only after that he would be done defeating Saitama in that event. If you along the line and Garo setting that as his like current ultimate. This like the scenario that I'm looking for and my okay, so like the label tension right now is definitely for like Garo not being able to like attack Saitama from behind, just like the scenario that I'm because like at that very last second, as like Garo gave out to like Saitama and like that Blizzard totally going up to that location and so the like Blizzard straight away would be at that point would be no defeat Garo like the scenario standing right behind left side and I was like scenario and I'm looking like maybe like the start of me recognizing Star and like straight away revealing to like that image like the so like it would be only at that point that I'm looking like rather than an attack from behind a face to face attack between Saitama and Garo. It's like what I'm looking like eventually how like the Garo fight and fight will be begin like scenario that I'm okay, so like looking at dimension right now, it's definitely gone like Zaro to like the probably refused to actually that basically he was actually defeated by Saitama like basically a hero who's like in isn't even in like the hero. So, it's like the scenario that we have right now for Zaro the friendly forcing himself and making himself like friendly, forcing himself to believe that and basically that the himself before like the fight against like Saitama. Garo already had like headache like suffering Garo probably like probably forcing himself to like believe that basically that he just went unconscious before like the fight even began and basically the fight didn't even take place would be along the lines that like Garo would be really trying to make himself believe yeah like Garo would be right at the same time like Garo would be just trying to like as soon as possible fight Saitama and complete fight against like Saitama yet and that way to like totally fully told himself that he's like totally right about like his own feelings at that point. It's like the scenario that and definitely I'm afraid like this itself I'm right now Garo probably looks as good best and struggling to actively convince like Garo who would have clearly seen like Saitama taking out like Garo with like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like even though Garo won't be like at all convinced by Garo will be trying to convince like Taro like and the still like so while the friendly repeatedly trying to convince Taro Garo might be getting like slight feeling as if like Taro's like convincing like at that point like Garo's like facial expression as well turning into like an intimidating uh, facial expression and that totally scaring to Taro as well and like Taro totally pretending to be convinced with like the scenario that is about it and my preparation yet like there are some sitting within that Garo to definitely also have people to like trust and to like not focus on anything else but then like Saitama and basically to like also to find Saitama where our peers and basically actually have that active that against like Saitama and to definitely for like witness him probably or and defeating Saitama and like until that point like Garo will be the great feeling as like to make contrast at a like in the scenario that I'm information right. Okay, so like the name of mentioned right now that it is the two monsters right now might be started underestimating, extremely underestimating like both Saitama as well as like Garo's legs. Might be like that to think seriously of demon brain. So that they are with like the monster opposition already have I think like we to have like a lot of intel on like the multiple strong tables and everything. So that we are different like due to like Saitama like name not even being present in like the robot like and definitely not even like anyone like the monster of the even while like 45% mentioned definitely may must would be certainly knowing that the extent of strength of like item still some of them like none of like the monsters in like the monster association would be totally unaware of. of that Saitama's strength, or even above like Saitama at all. Might be like that because it is like given to luckily with that in like the present like Saitama, so he's still defeating Garou like definitely and like at that point I'm looking that these two mortals who were like spying on Garou, the part of Garou like they might have straight away uh, underestimate that Garou as well as like Saitama, and might have straight away came to the conclusion that like the monster king Orochi might have probably made a mistake and might have probably overestimated the and like definitely these two pointers might be straight away assuming that like Saitama that might be an extremely weak hero and hence like them not even knowing about like the existence of like a hero like Saitama. So like Garou even losing to like such an extremely weak hero will be due to like Garou being even more extremely weak and even losing in with like that big hero being temporary fixture or the such these might have made given like these two monsters like the instant impression that like naturally like extremely weak uh might be and not even worth like the time monster of the movie along the lines of like a control that and the like two monsters might have came down to right now in the film. So like right now the current at least two monsters might be feeling that we need following for like a waste of time. So like these two monsters like right now might have something fixed in their minds to like definitely so right now it's left to take out like Garou and basically to like report back to that monster in Orochi as for like we've seen in actuality how extremely weak Garou was that like they have all like the hero estimated Garou. And basically to report back in such a manner to like monster in Orochi to give what like these two monsters like will be right now thinking it's definitely might not have been fixed in that mind it's definitely might have definitely. And they will be strongly feeling that like there won't be any competition at all. Due to that much being how extremely confident or how confident they will be feeling as for like like how easily Garo lost to like Saitama, they might be feeling that much confident and like they'll be strongly feeling that like Garo that pretty might be that extremely weak and like not due to like Saitama being so extreme because it's strong. Definitely will the Rangers. So definitely have to try like this is like rock conflict right now while fighting off in yeah and definitely these two monsters like while attacking Garou together still not even remotely standing a chance against like Garou like all these points usually even though Garou felt unconscious getting defeated by Saitama still under due to like Garou having getting like energy back getting like full energy so definitely I'm considering like Gabo might be probably absolutely ready to like probably that absolute end of the to like fight at like with like great power. So like I'm in the league right now. Those can want to like not even remotely stand a chance against like Garo's like all like it's not and in that way Garo like I'm just from right now taking out like both the monsters like both the monsters like can had a real like person that are probably fight and that would be only shocking that from Taro that is within that foreign strength of like Taro begins to be shocking and since the interesting Taro is like the scenario character for it. And at that point like I'm like Garo would be only feeling as like really so they would like get just like lost image back will be along the line. Yeah, like I'm feeling like there will be that side of Garo who is only refusing and unwilling to like actually believe that like he actually lost to like Saitama and instead like Garo will be for himself to like believe that he might have all and definitely I'm thinking like Garo will be uh, right now, so after like taking those 2 months, like that will be definitely trying to convince like that uh, convince Taro that like that was exactly what happened. While Taro at that point like would be totally so like the power of like Taro, with which like Taro will be like beating those 2 months single handedly like at that point, still like Taro will be telling Taro that like really so like since like so like that hero who so easily defeated Garo like how extremely extremely strong that hero may be like so at that point when I'm like Garo was like telling Taro that basically like Saitama did defeat Garo but like the scenario where Garo just like wanted do that something might be along the line like Garo most likely at that point like after like defeating both Pokemon is like and like with the Taro witnessing it, like, and then when that when Garo succeeding in like convincing Taro that would like to scenario that yet like Garo at that point although would be assured Taro like basically that is not point is not going to first to him. If finds like Saitama and like definitely he's going to bring Saitama to its exact location and basically that definitely they will be having and at that point Garou will be definitely ensuring to like have Tara once again as like the audience and will be throwing in the Tara that like Tara is like stronger that like Saitama by will be Saitama. That one was from that. The along the lines and like Garou will be promising to hopeful and excited like Taro like in the scenario. And the young in the scenario towards the be like even though like the two monsters like and like even though Garo will leave that area to be by Garo as well as the Sharo will be like leaving that area when assuming that like Garo had like totally taken off those two monsters and like among them those two monsters like to follow Garo like and enough like revealed by Garo like one of like the monsters and definitely I think it would be that cockroach monster like the cockroach kind of like monster like and like that monster and even those Garo would be like thing that he has taken off that monster like and that monster would be definitely like resilient and like tough. So that basically it will be still surviving that powerful like still it would be like that cockroach like monster will be bad injured. Then like it would be like to this survive it's like that monster will not survive like scenario. So like basically I'm just like once like the 1 day time period will be over like and like that one of like the flying monster like basically showing up to that location like the scenario that I'm and at that point I'm just like definitely that flying monster like seeing like two monsters in like that that was sent to like follow the against like value in the state. So like at that point, I'm experiencing from this like cockroach monster and like definitely that flying monster will be receiving that crucial information that basically there's this like specific hero that they have found in the entire of like the monster association uh had like ignored and basically have not realized that's like far extremely superior from that who was like the person that has defeated that get like the hero had had totally effortlessly figured out could be along the lines of that crucial information that that was response of the revealing at that point to like flying monster and basically that that hero that specific hero and that corporation was really revealing the name of like the hero name of like item should be like their ultimate high priority single top priority target and not that they need to like get definitely get to turn into like monster. Get along the lines of like that for such monster uh relate to like that flying monster. It's like I'm for the flying monster. Straight away will be heading back to like some of the association and monster association base and like according to like monster like the scenario that available. So like the monster at that point the black monster being already will be getting seriously period and interest by like the hero name of like item like the scenario. And on that along like the entire computing or is straight away doing like or to like the entire of like the master association monster in like the master association to like keep a sharp eye and a lookout for like the specific hero by the name like I don't know like like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like from that point on I'm looking like the master association for me the Saitama is like the top target and like the basically capture Saitama and turn Saitama to be like a monster as like the top target and top goal at that point. And then as well like monster association as well that way like temporarily shifting their goal to and targeting Saitama like setting Saitama as like the top target and top goal at that point. It's like in the scenario that I'm looking for the second one. Okay, so that's definitely I'm saying right now that is the monster thing or two yeah, might be that the only single monster that might be able to that create the monster cells that like for instance like humans do. Like that case of situation that famous again. So definitely like the eyeball monster like and like it claims to have created like monster thing or two like definitely first of all my brain is that like monster thing or two like human identity might be actually pseudosonic that the ninja who basically had I think like in like the past have found multiple times had attempted to like while targeting Saitama had like attempted and failed and like defeated at like defeating Saitama. So like I'm considering that maybe might be like pseudosonic that might be like one of the things for a thing especially with like the eyeball monster right now. revealing about like the human once like marketing for achieve was like having gone through like countless failures and sacrifice like moving everything. So it might have been definitely like it might have definitely not been so like it might be definitely like Stereophonic like the ninja that might be like the actual human who on that maybe like the buff like on who consider I can feel like it is Saitama and having failing might have maybe there might have been even unfamiliar multiple occasions where like Stereophonic might have targeted and attempted to after like this time after like putting in way too much of like training might have like launched all sorts of like ambush attacks against like Saitama might have embarrassingly failed and that it might have been when that Stereophonic might have gotten to spread that like right to points of like Stereophonic might have run into like the eyeball most of the animal strength. So like at that point like Stereophonic might have been that's quite like it's stronger. And yet like Stereophonic might have not revealed about like Saitama, but like Stereophonic might have been that as the extremely desperate and might have been willing to like to even turn into like a monster form like to anything to like get his strength to like skyrocket. Might have been like that desperate news like Stereophonic might have been in. And at that point, like it might have been like the eyeball monster that like by the one thing that like Stereophonic might have vanished. So like the eyeball monster like eyeball monster claims of like basically having created like most of the technology that might have been through that not just through like a bunch of like definitely it might have been through like the eyeball monster like might only having like its own unique power, which like it might have coupled with like maybe training as well, maybe its own training as well, maybe proves that it might have eventually transform like Stereophonic like the ninja into like monster technology might have been what might have happened in the event. So like definitely even to that transformation like into like monster thing for she might have definitely happened definitely not just for any monster self at all. Might be like actually the element that the eyeball monster might definitely not at all be able to like create like monster self. Like it might be only like monster thing for she I don't that may be able to like create monster definitely man definitely so that way like it might have been the case of like uh Stereophonic like and something like it might have been like only accepted if where like it might be through that the eyeball monster using its like unique powers like it might have managed to like stop that transformation to like happen solely and like it might be that strong to like get stronger that intent like desire to like get stronger more like anybody else that might have been like so any which might have been that absolute necessary factor uh which might be near up for like cyber monster to like like Spiritonic to like the ultimate monster thing probably might have been like the way like that way that way like might be that way how like the icon monster might have some Spiritonic thing to like monster thing probably might have been what might have happened in like the last 15 of the range. So luckily, sort of like eventually in like the civil battle against like the monster technology, like one like monster technology would be like the Liam protocol like monster technology would be having a weak spot at like some locations, Liam framework. So the Liam framework is that like for like eventually regardless of whether it end up being like Saitama or like Garou, that I'm trying to be one of these two that will be landing that eventually figuring out that weak spot of like the mountain technology and basically eventually successfully landing that one like that weak spot or like while fighting against like the mountain technology like actively one of their attack landing at that weak spot and basically at that point I'm like landing attack landing on the weak spot point causing like serious damage to for like the most of the technology which will be resulting in like the most of the technology like like the monster cells like that has like so far transformed like all the patent has been into like monsters like all of those monsters is collecting using its like powers and basically that way like all those like monsters like returning back to like the original human cells. If like there's another that about again maybe just like another attack on like the big spot like I'm like what the thing our team has well returning back to its like from the human form. And I'm just like at that point like that absolute surprise of like it is uh kind of a scenario where like the true identity, human identity of like how the thing our being getting revealed to be like this entire time being like being like pure sonic like the ninja. There's like an eventual use of final conflict scenario that I'm also probably cutting and my lyrics and so so like one thing I could mention if it infections of eventually ends up being like the ninja spirit of only that ends up being like the human identity of like monster being over then I'm totally right leaning more seriously more to the towards like the most of that being Saitama himself that will be eventually like defeating that and that battle against like okay, and like defeating monster being and like once like Sonic will return back to like human form like and that point like Sonic will be able to like take it like take it like and contain this like split into like even after like in going through the extreme extent of the turn himself into like a more to like bring down the fight and still ending up feeling like an absolute winner and by getting defeated once again by like even after all that there's like an individual scenario that I'm also going to bring and my injury and question and like that being that absolute sort of surprise to like Saitama would be totally confused at seeing like on defeating like amount of things or to see to realize that like this entire time it was like this kind of this also like an image and the problem scenario that I'm using for it and friends. Okay, so let me my preemption right now that basically Saitama's like home by sheer coincidence might be seriously close to that exact location, secret location of that the monster association phase might be like captured the situation that name of together. So like the name of name by now with like the assigned heroes like basically heading off to uh to like basically save like the hostage and everything like I'm talking about like maybe like with like Metal Knight like the child member of like recent communication with like the with like scientists who communicate to control like Metal Knight like maybe like the child member might have uh, been able to like been able to like access like the last known location of like Metal Knight might be like the case definitely in that way like definitely uh, that way, the players is putting like the trying to work might have successfully figured out at certain like the exact location of like the monster of in this might be also the case like the positive that so the player is putting like this mysterious gap which like which is to be like spying on like the house of like Saitama. And so for me like this mysterious guy might be one of like the F-rank heroes that Lehman and definitely I'm looking like since like I think like it's sort of integrate that like the monsters and like the monster association like knowing all the crucial details about like the hero top heroes from like the hero association like main implement missions and like this like single right hero might be like this guy who might be like this like right hero who might be having like the feeling of having like the suspicion that basically the possibility of like the monster association, like monsters in like the monster association, like knowing all like details, detailed out information about uh like of like the rank of heroes and everything might be due to that possibly uh they are being traitors among like heroes from like heroes. So it might be along the lines of that just like this guy of rank hero might have come down to the conclusion of like uh while after like figuring out like the approximate area of like the location of like the monster association like and like the very only at that point that like you might have noticed that like actually hero from like the hero association like basically staying at like a house so close to like the like staying not only staying but like actually living at like the house which might be probably extremely close to by your points it might be extremely close to like the actual location of like the monster association in like that way, like I'm like just like won't realize, won't find that out like this is right here might have came down to like the conclusion that like most likely that Saitama and everyone staying at like Saitama's platform, hanging out at like Saitama's house that is mainly like Saitama's son, as well as like King Genos, as well as like Silverfang, like basically them all like the most likely literally being like actively being greater than secretly allied to like the monster association and like secretly helping out like the monster association and basically then they possibly like staying and inflexively possibly staying at like a house close to like the association and when secretly providing help in terms of like resources as well as like information as well coming into that you can share details of like that you know from like the top you know from like the given position anything that might be then that might be more information to like and also it will be younger and that extreme that people that this like point you know might be probably having a certain limit so like the plan might be to like probably make it like amber consideration into like that house especially after like careful observation and ensuring that like among those gang of like heroes like president that of like in a situation where only one among them could be present in that house like at that point for him to like make that aspect and take consideration into that house and basically attack one of that single hero or an attack like that single hero and basically for then for him to like interrogate and to like find out the truth about like the truth about like about like the less of fiction about like one of them like that connection between like them and like the more conversation and like the communicating more opportunities for to get picture thing that comes to like that they do important to like find out like all the social details trying to like some of them and everything that like a master of like planning and preparing for like their initial identity attack and everything. Like this might be about like I'm doing right now. This like this is just getting early like an expansion or might be only at percent would be trying to like attempt to supplement to it. So definitely I'm looking like in right now at percent will be only uh, might be assuming that like things that's like the only here that's like okay okay in that output like amount have like in actually and like single time as well as like this problem as well might definitely it's not about left like the house that don't even at this point and like and like so definitely we might have only like the point who might have only miss like silver times as well as one of them as the next item and that way like you might be totally unaware like the talking about like silver front as well as like product that like Titan has moved and like that way in making that uh ambush attack of like an infiltrated to left side must move while also expecting for came along to be present at like Titan's move. But in, at that point getting that approve certain surprise of like the selected of that silver front and like reflecting the scenario that I'm looking at and might be so like definitely fundamental notion from different like even to the person like both like from the bank as well as product myself, you know, a lot on like that of like fighting of games like might be like that the species like it being already revealed that like a single day I think like something haven't even passed that even at this point. So definitely I would like silver bank and product might still be exhausted, seriously something but that so and with that king not having any power set or so that we have like that present by just like students guy who might be like an more like conduct me hence definitely even though he will be usually getting that unexpected shock of that the silver time as well as like rather like I'm still him swiftly managing to that attack and get away and escape with like things like from the sounds like this scenario that I'm